So as you heard it, my C8 was making a ridiculously loud squealing noise that was so embarrassing. And apparently this issue is more common than you think, even if you have OEM brake pads or ceramic brake pads for that matter. Other C8 Corvette owners have had the same issue, and after a little bit of investigating, I figured out a way to fix it. So let's go talk about my journey in like the last 2 weeks trying to figure out this issue and how we can save you the trouble of having to go through all the crud I had to. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. We do Corvette product reviews, how-to videos, news, and the occasional car rally and car show. So if that's something that interests you and you like this video, I invite you to subscribe to this channel as well as like this video. It does help me know that this kind of information is both useful to you as well as help grow the channel. So thank you for that. So alright, so now back to the video. So again, as you heard, I had a ridiculously loud squealing noise coming from my C8 Corvette. I mean, the Corvette gets a lot of attention on its own, so people are already looking at you, and then it's even more embarrassing when everybody's looking at you and then your brakes are squealing so loud that you're making everybody cringe and know exactly that it's coming from you. And it was one of those things that it didn't happen right away when I started driving. It started happening after I drove the car for about a few minutes, having the brakes just warm up normally, just through regular daily driving, not anything crazy. But once it started happening, it was pretty freaking loud. And my C8 has just under 40,000 miles on it, but I changed out the brake pads to ceramic brake pads from Protech about 4,000 miles ago. So the brake pads themselves are pretty new. And I did check to see if there was any kind of issues with the brake pads, and I didn't see anything. Generally, you might get a loud noise if you got a pebble that's stuck in there, but usually that's very consistent. That wasn't the case. And the wear pattern on the pads were good. Didn't look like there was anything wrong with them. So I put the pads back together, drove around seeing maybe I fixed it by just cleaning it up a little bit. Nope, it still made the same noise. So after that, I started to do a little bit of research and tried to figure out what the issue could be. And turns out my C8 isn't the only one, and there was people having almost the exact same issue as me. And what I actually found out was that it was a somewhat common issue, especially with those with the Z51 package, and in particular, the J55 brake system. By the way, if you've ever had this issue with your C8, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know your experience and how you dealt with it. Now, generally speaking, when you get into higher performance brakes, you do start going into a compromise between the brake system being rather quiet or actually starting to get louder and louder. And generally speaking, that's a common issue, but this definitely did not sound like that. And initially what I found from GM was, oh, there's nothing we can do about that. You just got to kind of deal with it, which I definitely was not satisfied with that answer, especially if the fact because the C8 wasn't making these noises beforehand and all of a sudden now it's doing that and now I got to live with it. No, that's not the case. But I did find a very important clue and document from GM where they actually address this loud braking squeal, and it's under a document called PIC 6429, which was issued back in January of 2021. Now in there they state that customers experience loud braking squeals and it comes from specifically the J55 brake system. And it instructs the technician to first hear the brake squeal and then diagnose if it's in a certain frequency range from 2000 to 4000 hertz. Now my brake squeal was actually on the lower end of that frequency range, but it made it kind of plausible that this might be the answer I was looking for. And it then calls out, which is more important, a fix to doing that, which is under the GM bulletin 17NA040. And that document basically says how to fix the actual squealing that's going on. Basically says that you have your metallic brake pads that are in friction with the calipers and causing this brake squeal. And the way to fix it is to use copper brake grease on the edges as well as on the back of the pad. Honestly, when I first read that, I didn't quite believe that the answer to that was just so simple. But I was at my wit's end of trying to figure out this issue, so I was like, why not? Let me see if that is indeed the issue. And I will say, when I did look at my brake pads, I did notice there wasn't any kind of brake lubrication left on the pads. So I reapplied paste, and I actually used a one that was a little bit better than the copper brake grease that they were recommending. I actually used ceramic thermal brake grease, which had a lot of really good reviews amongst people that have higher end brake systems to prevent that kind of squealing. So I used that instead. And sure enough, when I put everything back together, I didn't hear anything. It was absolutely amazing. It was gone, but it doesn't stop there though. So now that so I fixed the issue. My brakes were no longer making a high, loud squeal noise, but I was wondering myself, why is it happening now as compared to maybe before? So with that, I look back at those documents, and they do call out under time and depending on how the customer is washing their car, if they're using a high pressure water, that can actually wash off the brake grease or lube that you have on there. And that to me honestly made sense. I power wash my car all the time to try to keep it clean. And that's something that could reasonably happen. The car does have 40,000 miles on it, so it's starting to get up there in mileage. And generally speaking, it's something that I've seen other Corvettes that are in higher in mileage have that kind of issue. So it's something that you might, if you do run into that issue, it might be that. And it's something that you could bring up to the service technician right away as a quick fix. Or you can try to do the work yourself. It's actually not too hard. And you can check out my video on how to change brake pads, where I take you step by step on how to do that. And all you got to do is just get to the brake greasing part and just grease up the pads. It's funny because that document does say that the technician needs to tell the customer that this issue is probably going to come back. And it might come back in a week or so. Which, when I read that, I was like, what? So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on my brakes, or rather a close ear if you want to be technical about it. And if it does come up again, I am going to make a follow-up video, which you'll definitely see here. But in the meantime, check out any of my other videos, and we'll see you next time.